All right, again, I'd like to welcome you. My name is Beth Martinez, and I serve in the role of Chief of Staff and Strategic Planning for the district. This evening, many of the executive team members are here. Also, members of our broad-based community steering committee will be in the auditorium, they're here, in the cafeteria as well to assist you with questions. Before we move any further, I do want to explain about the purpose and the format of this evening's meeting. Clearly, you all know the importance because you're here, and that is amazing to see such a turnout, and we're so very grateful for the engagement in this wonderful community because that's what makes us the community that we are. The purpose of tonight is to be able to share data and information and ideas that have been generated by community members like you at the previous 2 community meetings. This is community meeting number 2 because it's the second time we've engaged throughout this process, but this is actually the 3rd meeting in this series of meeting number 2, the community meeting. So when you look at the slide and you see community meeting number 2, please know that this is the 2nd round of community engagement, but the 3rd meeting in this particular series. And the purpose of this evening is to get your feedback on the options. These are ideas. We're in the brainstorming phase of the facilities planning process. This is not about rezoning because there will be no attendance boundary decisions that are made during this process. This is about the utilization of our facilities and programming for our students, our current student enrollment, future projections, and the conditions of all of our facilities within Fort Bend ISD. We're working with a broad-based community steering committee that is taking all of the feedback that you all have provided over the last few days and will continue to provide after this evening's meeting and tomorrow night's meeting, and then through the opportunities we'll have online for feedback as well. So I want you to know that as of just a few moments ago, we had 10,450 responses so far in the 2 meetings prior to tonight's meeting. So that's amazing. Yes, thank you. Thank you. That shows the value that you all have as parents and community members and neighbors in coming together to listen, to learn more, and to provide your feedback on the options that the committee has developed, and a step further, to provide new ideas for the steering committee to consider. And that's really the value of this evening, is in getting your feedback about the options that the committee has created. But even further than that, or taking it even further than that, is providing new and different ideas that the committee can consider as they begin to develop recommendations for board consideration in May. So I want to tell you a little bit about tonight's format so that you'll know what to expect. The information is shared by high school feeder pattern, and they're in alphabetical order. So if you're towards the end of the alphabet in the high school that your area is zoned to attend, I just want you to kind of know where and when you'll be hearing that information. But as you give feedback tonight, we want your feedback for your particular community, but also listen and engage in the process at a district-wide level. Our committee has been charged with that, is really making decisions and viewing the data and listening to the full community in order to make recommendations. So while they may live in a certain area, we've been very purposeful in having a broad representation so that we do have community members that span this very vast school district with all kids in mind as they make decisions for our future. So I want to thank you for that. And with that, I'm going to press play on the video. Dr. Dupree would like to communicate his appreciation of you all for being here this evening and provide just a little bit more information about the process.
Good evening and welcome to tonight's community meeting on facilities master planning. We truly appreciate you taking the time to join us and provide your feedback on how Fort Bend ISD can better utilize our facilities and serve the students of Fort Bend ISD while providing innovative programming and exceptional learning environments throughout the district. Tonight, you will hear more about options that have been developed by the community-based Facilities Steering Committee. After a review of preliminary facilities assessment data from each school and an initial review of the overall educational environment at each district facility. As you discuss the various scenarios tonight, it's important that you keep a few things in mind. There are some key factors that you need to take into account as you consider options and give feedback on the options. One of the most important things you need to think about this evening is what the primary goal is. Is our focus on providing programming for our students regardless of cost, or is finance the bottom line? So you need to think about, is the decision going to be fiscally conservative? For example, would we use every available seat at our high schools to rezone and get all the students balanced throughout our 11 high schools? Or would we consider an option that constructs a new facility at some of our high schools, or perhaps a new high school in the district? All citizens would bear the cost of that decision, so we need the entire community to weigh in on what's the best option for the students in Fort Bend ISD. The other thing that's very important tonight as you make your decisions, as you give your feedback, is to really look critically at the process. This is a transparent process that sometimes gets a little dirty, to be honest, because we're airing all kinds of options, many of which may concern members of our community because they worry about their community-based schools. So it's very important that you understand and make sure that you interact with one another in an honest, transparent way with the understanding that the things you are hearing are options. Just that, simply options. They're not decisions, they're not recommendations, they're not even proposals, they're ideas. The work you do as a community will further guide the work of the community-based committee as that committee develops ideas and then recommendations and proposals for the administration to take to the board. So that's why it's so important that we have as much community engagement in this process as possible. And with that in mind, the last thing I would ask you to make sure you consider as you do your work this evening is to make sure if you have a new idea, a fresh idea that you have not seen discussed anywhere in this presentation, please bring it forward. Share it publicly, put it in your notes, put it in your feedback. We're still looking for ideas and solutions for ways to best utilize our facilities while advancing and growing academic programming for all students in this school district. No idea is a bad idea, and all ideas will be given full consideration. And now it's time to get on with the work of the evening. You've got a lot to do. Again, I want to thank you for making time to be with us. In Fort Bend ISD, we believe in operating as a collaborative community, and your voice is important. Your ideas are important, and we thank you for your partnership and all you do to help support all students in Fort Bend ISD.
And with that, Dr. Dupree and our board expect from us as an executive team and us to lead the community and the committee in developing a transparent process throughout this, and so that's why you're here. And it is critical that that you're able to engage with each other and provide us that feedback. And so we're asking you to do that this evening in a very structured way, yet providing an opportunity for conversation out in the cafeteria. And that's why you're here to get a lot of information, a lot of data about numbers and projections and condition, and then we'll ask that you adjourn into the cafeteria at the point that this presentation concludes so that you can provide your feedback to us in a very structured way through a survey online, and we have QR codes and links, and then we'll also have iPad devices available if that is helpful to you. And then we're also asking that you provide your additional ideas on some chart paper and give you also an opportunity at that time to engage with each other and engage with staff and steering committee meetings should you have any further questions. So we appreciate your respect of the process and of each other as we continue to engage with you to plan for today and an even better tomorrow in Fort Bend ISD. I'd like you to help me welcome Scott Leopold, who's an external consultant to our district, and he's going to help present the data to you this evening, and then he'll also be out in the cafeteria after the second presentation, should we need to have a second presentation. Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to stand in the light. Okay, I'm going to start with the overall agenda for this evening. I'm going to go through the process. I'm going to also quickly kind of overview the background information. We've got our PASA demographic data. We've got some preliminary facility condition data, and also some capacity data. We're also going to go through options by feeder pattern, and we're going to go in alphabetical order. And so we're going to start with Austin and end with Willow Ridge. And we also have some overall district-wide high school ideas to look at as well. Then we'll kind of overview the survey and then the next steps. This is our overall process. We started with our project startup. and then data collection and analysis. And again, that's our facility condition data, our demographic data, our capacity data. We ran everything through Facility Steering Committee, and I'll talk about the committee more in a couple minutes, and then through the board. And then we established an educational framework. We had 2 meetings in February where we talked about kind of high-level ideas around the future of education. We took that feedback to the committee, and we kind of established some boundaries for developing some options. An envelope to operate within. That information was then taken to the Board of Trustees, and then again through the committee, and then looping back. We took that information to begin developing options, and then that's what we're sharing with you tonight. This is a process that's going to be building over time, and so you're going to see the initial options that we presented to the board on March 26th, and then you're going to see also all kinds of ideas that we've been collecting over the last week or so in those idea parking lots. You're not going to see every single comment that we had on those sheets verbatim. We wanted to focus on the positive. We had some comments that were don't do this, do that. We're not going to focus on the don't do. We're kind of talking about all those ideas now. We're looking for all the ideas. And again, as per what Dr. Dupree said, no idea is a bad idea. Once we finish collecting feedback from the community, here's where we are. We're looping through the community feedback right now, and then we'll come back to the committee and then develop recommendations to the district leadership. As far as the committee goes, the committee is composed of 30 members and 3 alternates. 21 were designated by trustees, and 9 were appointed by the superintendent. The committee members are tasked with providing local insight, creating options, evaluating feedback, and making recommendations to the district leadership. Committee members have pledged to keep an objective view and consider the needs of all FBISD students. Digging into the demographic data, and again, this is from population and survey analysts out of College Station. They do an update for the district every year. They provide 10-year projections by school, and the projections go out to the 27-28 school year. Please note that when we're looking at this data, any data that we're showing that is either current school year or next school year, that would include students transferring in and out, and so that would show all the students that attend Quail Valley Gifted and Talented program in that program. But as we go out into the projection into the years 3 through 10, we're only showing neighborhood population, and so I'll illustrate that in another chart. One thing that I wanted to point out, it's difficult to see on this, but I can kind of talk us through it. This is just one map that's in that giant PASA report that we get every year. This is parcels for sale that are larger than 5 acres. And so the idea is this is the type of tool that the district would use to identify potential school sites. I don't expect you to read it, but the areas in blue are parcels that are for sale. And I just think it's important to point out that we have some areas where we have some growth where we don't necessarily have parcels for sale. And so that's just one of the little facets and challenges that we have to deal with throughout this process. Looking at our current utilization, so what this shows us is this is the utilization of every elementary school. We have policy FC local, which gives us parameters for utilization. And again, utilization is enrollment divided by permanent capacity, and I'll go into that in a couple slides. But if we have an attendance zone that is shaded in blue, that means that it would be underutilized or utilized under 80% of its permanent capacity. If it's in green, it's well utilized, so it's between 80 and 120% of capacity. And if it's overutilized, it's going to be in those pinks or reds, and that means that it's over 120% utilized. And so this is utilization based on the current boundaries. We have these little kind of schoolhouses here that just show us how many temporary buildings we have at each campus, and that's just for reference. So again, this is current utilization. This is utilization projected in the 22-23 school year. And so we have a lot more boundaries that go from green into the reds. And some go from pink to red. And so we're a dynamic growing district where we have a lot of enrollment coming in. Some of our hot spots that we have here, of course, are going to be that 99-1464 corridor around Madden. Some of the new spots that are starting to pop up are right here along the Fort Bend Toll Road, Lake Olympia Parkway. There's a lot of development projected in here, and that's going to impact Palmer Parks, Hightower, Lake Olympia Middle School area. And again, we're continuing to see growth in Sienna. And then if we flip to the next slide, this is the 10-year utilization. We have a lot of growth that's projected along the 521 corridor down here. And so you can see we do have a lot of growth projected in our communities, and there's going to be the need for new facilities, and with new facilities comes some boundary changes or rezoning. Here's our current middle school boundaries. Again, we don't have any pinks or reds here, but we've got some kind of darker greens that are starting to get onto that overutilized side of well utilized. Here's the projection for 22, 23, and then 27, 28. And one thing that I want to point out is that we show this low number, this low utilization at Quail Valley, and that's because that assumes that every student goes to their zone school. Remember, the projection numbers that we're using in those out years are only zone students only and do not include any transfers for students moving in and out for special programs or academies. Looking at high schools, here's our current boundaries. Here's the 5-year projection. And so we've done some good work over here on this side of the district, and these facilities kind of stay in our parameters here between 80 and 120%. Then we have some underutilization at Marshall and Willow Ridge, and Hightower, and some overutilization at Ridge Point. Here's our 10-year projection. Again, this area is still pretty well utilized, and then we still have our imbalance over here on this side of the district. Moving on to facility condition. PBK Architects has completed an assessment of all facilities. This had 2 different components that we looked at. We had deficiency and life cycle, and this is an evaluation of the physical components of the facility. And so these are the things like the HVAC systems, the roofing, electrical, plumbing, site, structural components, et cetera. These aren't necessarily systems that you're going to notice when you walk into the building that are deficient. These are kind of the bones of the facility. Educational adequacy is another component that they looked at. When we say educational adequacy, this does not have anything to do with the performance of the facility. This is how well a facility can address or align to the current educational specifications. And so where a facility condition assessment will kind of tell you what's broken, the adequacy assessment will tell you, do I have the right spaces there? Are they the right size? Do they have the right equipment? Do they have the right furniture? Those types of things. So that talks about the adequacy of the facilities, and again, that's not related in any way, shape, or form to the performance of the schools. All these deficiencies are prioritized. Priority 1 deficiencies are those things that are kind of those must-address issues, like a roofing issue would likely be a priority 1 issue. Priority 2 would be years 3 to 5 issues. Those could be, something like a flooring system or something like that. Priority 3 is that 6 to 10 year window of need, and then priority 4 is beyond 10 years. We use a facility condition index, and what that is that's the percentage value that we give to each facility. That's the cost to address the identified deficiencies versus the replacement cost of a facility. So if you've got a facility that's, the replacement cost is $100 million, and it has $50 million worth of deficiencies, it would have an FCI of 50%. The way we calculate this with our condition data is that we're taking all of the priority 1 and priority 2 deficiencies, and then half of the priority 3 deficiencies, and that gives us our educational adequacy index. Physical condition is the primary driver for facilities actions. We're looking at the educational adequacy, but only after we've used the physical condition to determine if a facility needs capital investment. We have one more guideline that we have here. This is the 66% of the kind of the 2/3 guideline. And what this says is that if you have a facility that exceeds 66% FCI, or the renovation costs or repair costs exceed 66% of the replacement costs, it's often more cost effective to just replace that facility as new. Moving on to capacity. All capacity information is based on the permanent capacity of each building and does not include any capacity from temporary buildings. All of our calculations are based on TEA standards, and we do show the temporary building count along with the capacity and temporaries on all our data sheets. So all those maps that we showed before, that's based purely on permanent capacity and doesn't include anything from portables. Again, utilization, this is the number of students attending or projected to attend a school divided by the permanent capacity of that facility. And again, our policy FC Local defines that a facility is well utilized when its utilization falls between 80 and 120%. And we also have to remember that programs are portable and can be moved to fill excess capacity when it's there. Now, putting it all together, the following slides are going to kind of show us a time lapse of all the facilities and their FCI and utilization over the next 10 years. Just please note that the utilization figures for 17 and 18 do include transfers, and then utilization figures beyond 2019 do not. And it'll become real evident real quick. The FCI priorities, what we did is we phased in those priorities year by year to kind of give us a 1-year snapshot of that FCI data. And so I don't expect you to be able to read every single dot on here, but the way this chart works is that we have utilization is going to be our x-axis going from left to right, and so a facility is going to be more utilized, or it's going to be overutilized kind of as we move into this area over here. Condition is going on the y-axis from low to high, and again with FCI, a lower FCI means that the facility is in better condition. A higher FCI means that it's in need of more repair. And so the way this chart works is that this section, this is going to be all our facilities that are going to be under that 80% utilization. And this is going to be over 120% utilization. And then this area in the middle is going to be our kind of sweet spot, that 80 to 120. And as far as condition goes, this area is going to show those facilities that are over 66% FCI. This is kind of that marginal area. This is between 33 and 66%. Facilities in here would likely need renovations or those types of projects. And then if it's below 33%, it's going to continue to need that kind of life cycle investment upkeep. Looking at our facilities, all of the high school facilities are purple. All of the middle school facilities are orange, and all the elementary facilities are green, and they're all scaled based on square footage. And so the larger the circle, the larger the building. And ideally, we want to keep all of our facilities kind of in this green box here, where we're in good condition, we're below 33% FCI, and then we're between that threshold of 80 and 120% utilization. And so I'm going to go through this a couple times just to give you an idea of it, but this is the current data as of this year, and then 18, 19, 19, 20, and we just switched to attendance zone population only. And so you see Quail Valley over here at like 36%. That's because it has an artificially small boundary because of the gifted and talented program. But now when we jump from 1819 to 1920, all that enrollment goes back to the attendance zone schools. 2021, 2022, or 21, 22, 22, 23, 23, 24, 24, 25, 25, 26, 26, 27, and 27, 28. And so what this kind of illustrates is that if we don't do anything, our facilities are going to kind of drift up in FCI, and then they're going to kind of diverge from utilization because we have fluctuating enrollment. We have some schools that are declining enrollment, and we have some schools that are increasing in enrollment. Some of our outliers here that we have in year 10, Meadows, Lakeview, Sugar Mill, Ridgemont, those are our facilities that are going to have the most need. And then we have facilities that are overutilized. Palmer, Heritage Rose, Commonwealth, Ridgepoint, Thornton, Neal, Sullivan, Bowie. And then we have some facilities that are kind of on the other edge of that. Quail Valley, again, is over here at about 36%. Again, that's because it has an artificially small boundary because of the GT Academy. And then we have some high schools that are also underutilized. So I'm going to do this one more time just because I think it's the best way to kind of illustrate and understand that data. So here's the current year, 18, 19, 19, 20, 20, 21, 21, 22, 22, 23, 23, 24, 24, 25, 25, 26, 26, 27, and 27, 28 finally. After we have all that data, what we start to do is we start to kind of look at those facilities and say, hey, what do we want to do with those facilities that kind of fall into those buckets? And those facilities that are going to be in that good condition, we're looking at general maintenance. If we have a facility that's in good condition that is underutilized, an option that we might consider is rezoning students in or moving a program in to get that enrollment up. Kind of on the other end of this, we could be looking at if we've got a facility that is in good condition but is overutilized. We could be looking at an addition, rezoning students out, moving a program out, or perhaps a relief school or something like that. So this just kind of gives you an idea of what we're looking at kind of at the macro level at these schools based on our FCI and our utilization information. Okay, now moving forward into the options, I just want to stress that no decisions have been made, and just again that this is not a boundary meeting. We're not talking about any boundary changes that would be effective next year. What we're talking about is high-level facility questions. Do we want to add additions to facilities? Do we want to build new facilities? We're not drawing any lines this year that would be effective next year. As you all know, the rezoning is a very intense process, and it requires a dedicated process. And the soonest we would have any kind of rezoning option for implementation would not be until, not next school year, but the following school year. We would have to have a dedicated process that would take place in the 18-19 school year for possible implementation in the 19-20 school year. So I just want to be very clear that kind of as we're going out there and talking about these options, if you're asking questions, well, what are the boundaries going to be? We don't know. We'd have to have a dedicated process to talk about any school attendance zones. And so, again, this is a high-level facility utilization process, and that's what we're talking about. Again, I want to reiterate that we're going to show a preliminary set of options. We're not married to these options. We're looking for additional feedback. The committee, again, is not limited to just the options that we're showing, but also we're considering any feedback that we can get, any parking lot ideas. So any survey information that we receive, any ideas that are written up on the flip charts that we're going to have out in the cafeteria. You'll also see all of the ideas that have come up at our meeting that we had at Travis and Marshall last week. And so this is a full transparent process. Since the board presentation on the 26th, we have had additional ideas already come in. We're kind of calling those our parking lot ideas, or they're in our idea parking lots. And I'm going to go over those tonight. And again, I'm not going over them verbatim because we'd be here until the cows come home. But it's important that we look at all this information. This is just a screenshot to just be fully transparent. These are kind of all those parking lot ideas that we had from Travis last Tuesday. And then here's all the ideas that we got from Marshall. And so you can see we had a lot more turnout at Marshall than we did Travis. And so I would expect something like this tonight as well. What's also important is that we're considering all feedback. Quantity or volume of the same feedback doesn't matter. And so if you see something up there that has already been commented on, you don't necessarily need to put it again. I'm not going to stop you, but we want to make sure that we collect that feedback. But seeing the same thing 1,000 times isn't going to make it stand out more in our minds. We're going to look at all feedback as we collect it. Just some considerations before we go into this. I want to go through what Dr. Dupree said again. Just kind of fundamentally, what is our goal of this process? Do we want a budget to provide programs for students regardless of cost? Or do we want to be fiscally conservative to reduce costs and save money? And so as you're kind of going through these options, think about that. Consolidations, you're going to see some consolidations on this, on these options. Consolidation does not mean that a school is going to be closed and boarded up immediately. If facilities are vacated, they'll likely serve as swing space for students while other schools are being renovated or replaced. In a fast-growing district like Fort Bend, this may be happening for a long time. And also consider the demographics do shift over time, and vacated facilities can be opened again if they're in good condition. Consolidation is intended to give students access to more resources. That's the primary purpose of it. I also just want to reiterate again that our options are grouped by high school feeder pattern, and in some cases, students may be zoned to a school outside of their feeder pattern, and so you may have to look at more than one feeder pattern to kind of get all that information. And I'll go through that in detail as I go through this. I'm going to start with Austin because it starts with A, and we're going to go alphabetical. And I'm going to take some more time on this one to just kind of show you how all these different data fields work in this. So our issues in this area, we have some overutilization in adjacent schools and adjacent feeder patterns, and so I'm talking specifically about Madden and Neal. This map shows the Austin feeder pattern. The purple line shows the current high school attendance area. The orange lines are the middle school boundaries, and then the shaded background colors, I'm going to move to this one so you guys can maybe see a little better. The shaded background colors are the elementary boundaries. And so you can see we only have 2 elementary schools that are physically located within Austin, and that's Oyster Creek and Walker Station. But we have portions of Madden, Holly, Arizona Fleming, and Lakeview that all serve students within the Austin feeder pattern. And so you'll need to look at other feeder patterns to get options and recommendations for those schools, but we want to be cognizant that we do have other schools serving students in the Austin feeder pattern. Looking at this data sheet here, we have this information for every single feeder pattern. It shows our school type, the year built, permanent square footage, acreage, our overall deficiency costs, and those are priorities 1, 2, and then that half of 3. the deficiency in life cycle FCI, and so that's the condition of the facilities. We also put the educational adequacy index, and again, that's a separate measure. It's not included in this number, it's a totally separate number, and I just want to reiterate that that doesn't have anything to do with the performance of the school. It is how well can the school serve the current program. We also have permanent capacity, number of portable classrooms, amount of capacity in portable or temporary buildings. And so these numbers are not, this portable number is not in this number. This is permanent capacity only. We also have our current enrollment. And so this is going to be the 2017-18 enrollment, which includes students transferring in and out for programs. And then we also have the 5-year projected enrollment, which does not. We have the change in enrollment, and then we have the net transfers in and out. And this is really just for reference. This shows you how, of these 846 students, how many of them are transferring in from out of zone or out. If it's a positive number, it's in. If it's a negative number, it's out. And so in this situation at Oyster Creek, we have 56 students coming in from out of zone. And I can tell you right now, the reason that is because we have students overflowing from Madden to Oyster Creek. And so that just kind of gives you that reference point so you can look at that 5-year number and say, okay, well, we have some transfers going in here. If we apply those transfers, I can maybe in my, on my napkin add these two things together and kind of get an idea of what that enrollment would be if those program transfers stay at the same level. We also show over and underutilization, and so this is current and this is projected, and if the utilization falls below the FC local threshold, it's going to be in blue, and that's that 80% number, and if it's over that threshold, it's going to be in pink or red, and it's that 120% number. So moving on, we also have some underutilization in some adjacent schools, and so we have some schools in the Bush feeder pattern that are underutilized. We do have a feeder pattern split in this area with Lakeview. We've got about 310 students, or a little more than half of the students that attend Lakeview actually reside in the Austin feeder pattern. And we also have some additional feeder splits with Madden, Holly, and Fleming. What Madden does is all of the Madden students feed to Austin, and then all the Madden students feed to Garcia, and then the students that are north of Airport go to Travis, and south of Airport go to Austin. And so that's the feeder split that we have here. Moving into our options for Austin, option 1 is to construct Elementary 51. This is located just south of Airport, kind of off of 99, accesses on from Airport. This would likely relieve Madden and possibly Neal Elementary schools, and you'll have to look at Madden or you'll have to look at the Travis feeder pattern for Neal and Madden. But also keep in mind that we're going to have to look at possibly rezoning within some of the other schools to balance utilization. Once we have that capacity for 51, we have so much growth in that area that it may not be enough to relieve all that overutilization. And so we'll need to talk at some underutilized adjacent schools. Looking at Oyster Creek, currently its projected utilization for the 22-23 school year is going to be 78%. So it may have some capacity to possibly take some of those students from that Lakeview area. Some additional ideas that we got from the meetings that we've had thus far. Consider constructing Elementary 51 with the classroom addition so that would open with the capacity of about 1,000 students on the first day instead of the 850 prototype that we have. Also consider aligning Madden with the Austin High School feeder pattern. Consider Elementary 51 to be large enough to accommodate all of Aliana with Madden. And then consider possibly an additional school in the area beyond Elementary 51. Kind of on the other side of this, additional feedback, consider rezoning the Travis feeder pattern to the Austin feeder pattern north and west of Airport and West Belfort and east of 99 to relieve Travis and solve that Madden-Garcia feeder split that currently exists. And so kind of the feedback that we're getting in that area is that we would just like Madden to go one way or the other and not go to Garcia and then bounce back to Travis. If it's going to go to Garcia, we'd like to see it at Austin. And if it's going to be at Travis, we'd like to see it at Bowie. That's kind of that feedback that we got from that. Consider rezoning all non-Aliana residents out of Madden. And again, consider rezoning area east of Highway 59 to Austin. And so I think that's probably referring to possibly some of that Telfair Cornerstone area. Moving on to Bush. I'm not going to go through this as slowly as I went through Austin because you'll be able to look at all that information later. Our issues here, except for Patterson and Seguin, all elementary schools are projected to be underutilized. Enrollment at Patterson and Seguin is projected to continue to increase. The area middle schools are projected to remain below 80% utilization. We do have feeder splits at Patterson and Holly at high school. Holly splits between Austin and Bush, and Patterson splits between Bush and Travis. Our option for this, perform life cycle replacements on facilities based on needs, consider zoning students from underutilized schools and adjacent feeder patterns. And so when we establish those boundaries for elementary 51, we may have to look at some of the schools in this area to also balance that utilization. Some other feedback on this, consider rezoning area east of Highway 59 to Bush and west of 59 to Clements. Again, just some ideas. Moving on to Clements, I'm going to go through this one a little slowly and more methodically because there's some confusion out there on this one. Utilization at Commonwealth is projected to remain over 120%. Utilization at Colony Meadows is projected to remain utilized over 120%. Utilization at Fort Settlement is currently below 120, but is projected to reach 120 within the 5 years. There's no land for sale for additional schools in this area. We have Austin Parkway and Settlers Way that split between Clements and Elkins. And then we also have First Colony and Fort Settlement that both extend their boundaries well into the Elkins feeder pattern. And so part of our confusion is that we're grouping everything by feeder pattern based on where the facilities are physically placed. And so First Settlement and Fort Settlement and First Colony are both physically in the Clements feeder pattern, and their boundaries extend beyond. I want to reiterate that this is not a rezoning process, and just because when you go out and you look at the Elkins feeder pattern chart and you don't see Fort Settlement and First Colony on there, that does not mean that they're being rezoned. It just means that they're physically in the Clements feeder pattern because we can't have two schools in multiple feeder patterns because we're showing costs. And so that's the reason for that confusion, and I apologize. But I just want to reiterate that just because you don't see Fort Settlement and First Colony in the Elkins feeder pattern does not mean that there's any option to rezone them out. Okay, going on to option one. Consider additions on Commonwealth, First Colony, Fort Settlement, and Settlers Way. And that is, again, to balance our utilization. Now, looking at this, overall, we would get to 90, we would go from 109% utilized with our current facilities. If we put additions on those 4 facilities, we're down to 91%. But we still have some imbalance between those facilities, so there would likely have to be a rezoning process between those schools to balance that enrollment, because even with an addition, we're still looking at 127% utilization at Commonwealth. So an addition on the school isn't necessarily going to solve all the problems, but it does make it easier. Another option for this area is to consider the conversion and reuse of the administration annex on Sweetwater. This could be used as a standalone facility, or it could serve as a special facility that serves more than one school. It could be a K-1 facility that would serve some of the areas around it. And just for reference, this is the annex right here at this location. And so, again, this is just a kind of out-of-the-box idea. Let's look at utilizing some other facilities that we have. Looking at the middle school options in this area, and again, this may have some implications in the Elkins feeder patterns as well, because we have the First Colony and Fort Settlement boundaries that do extend into that feeder pattern. What this option is to construct an addition on First Colony, and then we would have to rezone and balance utilization between First Colony and Fort Settlement. On this option, it does not say Quail Valley Middle School anywhere. And so I want to be very clear that we have options, and we have parking lot ideas that other people have brought to us, and I haven't gotten to those yet. So I just want to be very clear that as we're looking at these options, what this says is that we put an addition on First Colony and then balance that enrollment between First Colony and Fort Settlement. And so looking at the utilization with that addition and the projected enrollment, we'd be right at 100% with that. And so just keep that in mind, that it gets us to 100% with that addition. It doesn't get us below 100%. We'd be right at capacity. Okay, so some other ideas that we got in this area. Consider the reuse of a commercial site somewhere along 6 to serve as an additional elementary capacity. With the growth of Amazon and online retailers, we're starting to see retail space, commercial space become available. Consider moving the Gifted and Talented program at Quail Valley to another underutilized middle school and rezone enrollment to balance between Fort Settlement, First Colony, and Quail Valley, and also see the Elkins feeder pattern. Again, this is just an idea. Okay. Remember, excuse me, let me get through this. Please remember, these are ideas and that no idea is a bad idea. Okay. Consider using UH Fort Bend facility to relieve Clements and Fort Settlement. Partner with charter schools. Build a new middle school in the Riverstone area. Consider, let me get through this. Consider the annex as a 4-5 center. Take another look at the capacity at Colony Bend and consider an addition. Balance enrollment through rezoning with Colony Bend. Consider aligning Telfair back to Kempner to relieve Clements. Okay. All right, let me get through this. Consider building a new school to the west. Consider renovating Commonwealth to accommodate 6th graders. Consider adding more capacity to Clements. Consider diverting new homes or communities that are overflowed to Fort Settlement to Quail Valley, keeping current students where they are. For option 1, instead of a K1 center, consider a 4-5 center. I think they mean option 2 with that. Build a new elementary school to relieve Commonwealth capacity and avoid rezoning. Again, remember that map that we showed where all that available land isn't? Consider adding additional capacity at Commonwealth. Again, consider making Highway 59 the zone line. All right, I'm moving on to Dulles. We've got 11 feeder patterns to get through. Okay, looking at Dulles. If you remember our chart from before, Meadows Elementary has the highest FCI of all facilities. The remaining elementary schools have projected utilization that range from 66 to 118%. Barrington Place currently splits between Kempner and Dulles. So our options in this one: demolish and rebuild Meadows on its existing site, right size for the population. Perform renovation and life cycle replacements on the other facilities based on needs. We need to consider that Meadows students may need to be accommodated at nearby schools during demolition. We've got some other parking lot ideas about this. Other option for this: vacate Meadows site and accommodate students in adjacent schools. So looking at Dulles, Barrington Place, and then perform renovation and life cycle replacements on other facilities based on needs. Some of our parking lot ideas: consider rebuilding Meadows large enough to serve the Barrington Place students within the Dulles feeder pattern, and then use Barrington Place as swing space for Meadows and the other projects as those renovations are going on. If Meadows is replaced, allow Meadows to retain identity in a swing facility. If Meadows is replaced, consider swinging into the old Wharton Junior College, may require a lease. Consider working with the City of Meadows Place on land acquisition to allow swing to occur on site. And so what that means is we would construct the replacement facility next to the existing facility, and so it would maintain its presence during construction. Consider rebuilding Meadows on extra land next to the school to bring back the deaf, hearing, speech impaired program. Consider rezoning all of Barrington Place feeder to Dulles. Consider creating Meadows after rebuilding it as a magnet school for natural sciences. Meadows already has many programs in this area, and there are many opportunities in Meadows Place. Rebuild Meadows, use MR Wood as a swing facility. Take Belcamp, Brookside, Venetian Estates from Highlands and send to Kempner, which will relieve overcrowding at Dulles. Consider making Lakeview an early childhood center. If Sugar Mill and Lakeview consolidate, consider using the remaining school swing space for Meadows while it is rebuilt. Consider building Meadows smaller, 350 to 400 to save money and rezone the area north of Belford into Barrington Place. So again, we're collecting all kinds of ideas about this. Moving on to Elkins. Utilization, now I want to just be very clear. There is not a lot of mention with the First Colony and Fort Settlement in Elkins because those facilities are in the Clements feeder pattern. So we're going to kind of talk about the facilities that are physically located in here, which could be Lantern Lane, Palmer, Quail Valley Elementary, Sullivan, Lake Olympia Middle, Quail Valley. Utilization at Palmer is projected to be over 120%. And again, that's that growth that we're projecting on the Lake Olympia corridor, that area. Continued growth in Riverstone is projected to increase enrollment in Elkins, but it's not projected to exceed 120% until 26-27. Utilization at Quail Valley is at 76, and this is because of the Gifted and Talented program does not accept transfers into the program after 6th grade. Looking at our options in this area, simply just consider rezoning between Lantern Lane and Quail Valley to balance that enrollment. 148% at Lantern Lane, 72% at Quail Valley. Consider projected utilization at Austin Parkway and Settlers Way as a way to relieve overcrowding at Sullivan. Keep in mind that depending on what happens in the Clements feeder pattern, these facilities might have additions. An addition was planned for Palmer in 2013 but wasn't needed at the time. A new school along the Lake Olympia Parkway Fort Bend Toll Road corridor is in the Hightower feeder pattern, which can address that overutilization issues that we have at Palmer. Another option for this area, build that addition onto Palmer and then balance the utilization within the other schools in the feeder pattern. Again, that addition was planned in that 2013 FMP but wasn't needed. But now that we have that additional growth, it is. Looking at the middle schools for this feeder pattern, again, this is going to kind of focus on Quail Valley and Lake Olympia. Consider expanding the GT program at Quail Valley to draw enrollment away from the overutilized schools in the area, so maybe we can increase that enrollment there. Another thing for us to consider in this area, the majority of students attending Lake Olympia feed to Hightower, and we'll get to that in a couple slides. Other ideas here, consider moving GT at Quail Valley to another underutilized middle school, and then again rezone to balance that enrollment between Settlers Way. I heard you guys the first time. Consider addressing Lake Olympia Parkway, Fort Bend Toll Road corridor with additions at Palmer and Parks instead of new construction. Consider converting Lake Olympia Middle School into an early college and then rezone students to Quail Valley, knowing that we need the GT Academy to move. Okay, other ideas here, partner with charter schools. Build a middle school in Riverstone. All right, and then time for the district to consider vouchers and give parents options different than overcrowded campuses and underperforming schools. Expand GT at Quail Valley, 300 students per class. Keep Riverstone zoned to Fort Settlement by moving Colony Meadows to First Colony. Feed Riverstone middle school students into the new Sienna Middle School. Build new elementary school, getting the majority of students from First Colony and Fort Settlement, a new middle school. Utilize commercial lots at LJ Parkway and University Boulevard near Highway 6. Rezone, again, we're collecting feedback at this point. And so if you've got additional ideas, let us know. Consider zoning Telfair to Satarsha and Kempner. Okay. All right, I'm moving on. All right, moving on to Hightower. Utilization at Burton is projected to remain under 80%. Utilization at Parks is projected to exceed 120%. Utilization at Hightower is projected to be below 80%. Hightower does not have a middle school within its boundary. Palmer splits between Hightower and Elkins beginning at high school. So our option in this area, construct a new elementary school to relieve Parks in the Lake Olympia, Fort Bend Toll Road corridors, perform renovation and life cycle replacements on other facilities based on needs. Parking lot ideas, consider addressing that growth in this area with additions on Palmer and Parks instead of new construction. And then our converting Lake Olympia Middle School into the early college idea. Other ideas in this area, combine Willow Ridge and Marshall High Schools, move Ridgepoint to Hightower, make Ridgepoint an academy. Consider rezone to feed Baines and Sienna Crossing into Hightower. Rezone our current neighborhoods, rezone all addresses north of Steep Bank Trace into Sienna into Hightower to alleviate overcrowding. Build a feeder middle school in the area, have 7th graders go to Thornton. Open Thornton at 8th grade for 1 year, and then do a grade configuration transition that I'll talk about in a couple slides. Excuse me, let me get through this, please. Let's be respectful of all the feeder patterns. Okay, I'm going to start over. So combine Willow Ridge and Marshall High Schools, move Ridgepoint to Hightower, and make Ridgepoint an academy. Rezone to feed Baines and Sienna Crossing into Hightower. Well, real quick, we're collecting feedback in a written format so that it can be recorded. Please rezone all addresses north of Steep Bank Trace from Sienna to Hightower. Build a feeder middle school in the area. Have current 7th graders go to Thornton. Open Thornton 8th grade for 1 year. And then move 6th grade into Thornton in 1920, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Keep our children at Hightower and zone all children to their home school. Zone some Ridgepoint students to Hightower. Okay. Moving on to Kempner. Lakeview is one of the other facilities that has a very high FCI. It also has an expansive attendance area that extends beyond 1464. Town West and Sugar Mill both have marginally high FCIs as well. First option in this feeder pattern, close and repurpose Sugar Mill for district use, perform a full modernization at Lakeview, and consider a rezoning process to align these Lakeview students within the Austin feeder pattern. Consider rezoning Barrington Place students within the Kempner feeder pattern into Lakeview or Town West. Perform renovation and life cycle replacement at other schools, and just remember that the majority of the Lakeview students actually reside in the Austin feeder pattern. Option 2, close and repurpose Lakeview for district use. Perform a major renovation on Sugar Mill. Consider a rezoning process to align Lakeview students residing in Austin to feed into those schools. And then again, consider serving those Barrington Place students on this side within the Kempner feeder pattern. Some parking lot ideas that we have here. Consider building an addition on Town West and either renovating Sugar Mill or rebuilding Lakeview large enough to accommodate the Kempner portion of Barrington Place. And so that idea is that between one of the two facilities down here in Town West, we can accommodate the students that live in this area, which is about 1,400 students. Consider aligning Telfair back to Kempner to relieve Clements. Consider Lakeview site for early childhood center. Consider renovating Lakeview and Sugar Mill, keeping both schools open. Utilize Lakeview or Sugar Mill as swing space for Meadows. Again, rebuild Meadows, use the MR wood. These are kind of repeats from that Dulles feeder pattern. Consider making Lakeview an early childhood center. If Sugar Mill or Lakeview consolidates, use the remaining school swing space. Just to kind of to close the loop on this one, the idea here is that we really have 5 schools, Town West, either Sugar Mill or Lakeview, Barrington Place, and Meadows. If 3 of those schools are built large enough, they can serve all the students in those areas in 3 facilities instead of 5. Looking at Marshall, utilization at the elementary level is below 80% and is projected to continue to decline. Missouri City Middle School is currently utilized under 80% and is in good condition. Marshall High School is currently utilized under 55% and is in good physical condition. Option 1, close and repurpose Hunter's Glen for district use. Perform renovation and life cycle replacements on other facilities based on needs. Just a consideration, between just the 4 elementary schools in this area, Armstrong, Glover, Hunter's Glen, and Jones, we have an excess of 1,100 seats. And so we can easily serve all those students in 3 of those facilities instead of 4. Now we did not have any parking lot ideas prior to our meeting that we had at Marshall, but we got a lot of feedback last week from Marshall. So consider adding academy to Marshall with the existing boundaries. And that could be 1 academy or it could be all the academies. Open enrollment for Marshall. Half of Quail Valley should go to Marshall, half should go to Elkins. Consider rezoning Ridgepoint students to Marshall. Consider, excuse me, please let me get through this so that we can move on and collect our feedback in our designated form. Consider rezoning to increase attendance. Use funds for Ridgepoint 9th grade center to make Marshall more attractive and academically. If Marshall becomes an early college, please keep fine arts, statistically proven to raise test scores, bus students from overpopulated schools such as Clements to Marshall. Consider making Progressive School the main academy hub. Rezone north of Highway 6 to Marshall. Rezone part of Ridgepoint to Elkins. Close Glover. Utilize this space for administrative purposes. Develop programs such as diversified academies, medical media within the school, and implement them preemptively at elementary and middle school. Tackle elementary issues of literacy and advocacy programs that monitor and track success. Rezone neighborhoods close to Marshall from Elkins. Consider socioeconomic status when rezoning. Don't just move students from school to school without offering a better school. Bring business opportunities to this area for it to thrive. Consider CTE. Equity is key. If high school campuses lose their community and students are bused, there would be 2 East Side high schools. There should be 1 East and 1 West. I think they're talking about academies. Zone nearby subdivisions into Marshall and Missouri City Middle School. Why are these neighborhoods getting bused to Elkins? Bring overflow of kids to Marshall so it can stay open. Have academy programs return to Marshall. Rezoning should be done if it will resolve the issue of lower student population. This school is an integral part of the community. And find another option that will divide and devalue our community. Institute Law Academy after students' namesake to attract students district-wide to help increase enrollment. Partnership with HCC down the street to build a GT Academy at Marshall. Send overflow students from Ridgepoint to Marshall and Willow Ridge. Bring Briargate and Blue Ridge to increase enrollment numbers at Marshall. Renovate Hunter's Glen section by section while having students attend school on the other side of the building. Build a new facility on adjacent or same site to Hunter's Glen while having students attend the current building. Establish Hunter's Glen as a pre-K facility for the Marshall feeder pattern. Make Marshall the only school that has advanced programs, i.e. robotics, technical schools, allow students to graduate with a trade certificate. Programs like oil drilling pipeline, LVN, communicate with ACC to transition some of the certification programs to Marshall. Provide courses that when students graduate, they may have a trade under their belt to help pay their way through college. Do a dedication ceremony and all the positive contributions that Marshall alumni have made, like a Wall of Fame. Missouri City Middle School, bring back our kids from Quail Valley that used to go to Missouri City. Turn Quail Valley into a special needs middle school for our area, like what was suggested at Blue Ridge. Look at Jones and Hunter's Glen and Armstrong to Missouri City, looking at moving those to Willow Ridge and Blue Ridge, Briargate, Ridgemont to McAuliffe to Willow Ridge. Looking at a special needs at Blue Ridge to Quail Valley special needs. And then a career center for Marshall, for special schools, magnet and career producing phase. Build the annex for technical education academies into the middle of the district for fair travel time. And that's going back to that Kempner option that we had there. Okay, moving on to Ridgepoint. Our issues here, utilization at Ridgepoint High School is projected to exceed 120% utilization. Utilization at Leonetti and Sienna Crossing are projected to exceed 120. Heritage Roads is projected to stay below 120 in the 5-year planning horizon, but exceed 120 after 22-23. We still have more projected growth in this area. So our first option here is to address elementary schools. Build 2 new elementary schools because we've already put additions on every single elementary school in here. Build one kind of on the Texas 6 corridor and then the other one on the 521 Sienna Parkway corridor. And keep in mind that there's additional growth projected in this area. If we had those facilities online, the overall utilization would be 82%. It's currently projected to be 111%. Moving on to middle schools and high school, this is the grade configuration change option. And so what this would do is this would convert Baines to a 6-7 facility that would serve all the students in the Ridgepoint feeder pattern. Thornton would be an 8-9 facility that would serve all the students in the Ridgepoint feeder pattern, and then Ridgepoint would go 10-12. Now, this keeps our overall utilization at 120% until 23-24, but would still require portables. But it delays our overall utilization to 120%. Thornton would need to be reconfigured within its existing footprint to increase capacity. There are some kind of next generation spaces that are in there for collaboration Those would have to be turned into capacity-bearing spaces, knowing that our footprint at Thornton is actually larger than Baines, even though the capacity is lower. This may need to be implemented